So welcome back to my Carpenter's Daughter YouTube channel, and today it's cold, it's 5 degrees, and I've probably picked the worst day for this, although I know snow's coming. I'm going to convert this window into some French doors, and if you look closely through the window here, if you're new, a few weeks ago we fitted that giant one over there because it was a really old, inefficient sliding door patio, and it's so much warmer in there. In fact, you can see the old ones over there. We've just leaned it up against the old cottage. I might actually turn them into some cold frames or something like that. Anyway, I've had to do quite a bit of research for this, and any time I've used a disc cutter, I've done it in areas it wasn't as important because I needed the practice. Anyway, the problem I've got with this is it's very likely to be a London brick, a frog brick like this. So when I cut into these bricks, many builders will tell you you should tooth the bricks instead and then cut some and turn them the other way around. Now, do I look like a brickie? No, I'm not going to do that. But I do probably have to replace 2 bricks either side here because this sill is actually going inside it. So if I don't replace these, we're going to be left with a daft little gap, which is going to look stupid. That does need to be done. That'll be with very basic skills. But my plan is, once I've done the neatest cut I can do, I'm going to set back the frame to around 12mm, the lip thickness of a frogged brick. Now, the other thing that I've been thinking is, okay, I could set it back a little bit further and put some mastic around, or I set it back by maybe 20mm, a lot of people suggest that, and put some trim around it. But if you look on forums, some people think trim is nasty. I don't think there's any problems with it, but the plan is I'm just going to stick with this lip here, see what it looks like, get it all plumb, and then we'll tidy it up with mastic. Now, another issue a builder will tell you is, what if your perps, these joins, don't line up, they're not plumb on the wall? Now, if you look closely, the builder hasn't got them plumb at all. These two are offset compared to these, but when I have put a spirit level along here, in line with the existing brick opening, it's not going to be a problem, thank goodness. In fact, if it is, it might be just one towards the bottom. And I think from memory, we're going to be cutting, I think this is the bottom row, I can't totally remember. But on this side here, there's absolutely no risk of anything like that. So I hold that there, it avoids them completely. What I'm trying to say is I didn't want to run the risk of having my cut here and then the end is actually not a brick, it's a bit of mortar that I've got to keep there, and it's going to look a little bit shoddy. Anyway, thankfully we're going to be fine, but the first thing I need to do is trim off these protruding bits of sill because it's blocking any area where I can put a batten there, get it plumb, mount it to the bricks, well, the mortar, and then run my disc cutter along it. So that's the first thing I'm going to do with a reciprocating saw. I'm just going to use a metal blade, not a wood one. Oh, and make sure you don't catch the brick with it. Now I'll work on mounting a batten to the wall in line with the window opening. Well, that didn't go to plan. Look at this. I thought I'd be smart by mounting the batten to the bit that's going to go, and all it did was move this little piece of brick, so I've got to go to a bit of mortar further up now. I'll start again. Try there. Now the plan is I'm fixing the concrete screws to the mortar joins because I can just hide those, fill them later. I don't want to go into the brick because it's just going to look a mess forever. And I'm putting the batten on this side of the window where I cut on the inner bit where the bricks are going to go, because if I slip into the bricks that are going to go. If I put the batten on that side and I slipped, I'm probably going to have to replace some bricks. So I don't want that at all. Now I know this is plumb because I've put my spirit level in line with the bricks, got it plumb, marked it with a pencil, and so I'm just using the pencil line as a reference now. Yeah, I'm putting 3 in. That's better. Anyway, so you can probably tell by the daylight I'm on another day because we just don't have many daylight hours. And yesterday we had a blizzard and it's freezing. Look, my mixing tray was full of ice. and our pond's water has an inch thick of ice. Also, a quick tip, if your concrete screws are a little bit loose, put a cable tie in there and it'll just nip it in. I've had to do that for the top two. I didn't want to keep drilling more holes. So I want precision for this job. So although I've got my battens here and the plumb, I've also double checked the measurements in between and matched with my frame, and I've got a centimetre to play with. And that reminds me, I quickly want to show you how I measured up for this. So what I did was take 3 measurements between the bricks at the top, middle and the bottom here. And it's the smallest measurement that I needed. Also, when I told the window company, I told them brick to brick measurements because they can take 5mm off for either side. Now for the height of what I needed, it's a little bit trickier. I knew that my height was where the steel lintel is, which is just a steel bar. But for the bottom, I knew it was so many bricks high. So I was able to follow that around, and that gets me to here, this mortar join here. And because it's external, I needed a sill which is 30mm. The company sorted this all out for me. So the company have reduced 30mm for me, plus another centimetre for clearance. Anyway, now I've triple checked and hopefully things are going to be perfect. What I'm going to do is run along the inside of my batten with an angle grinder first, wearing PPE, just so I can get a head start on my accurate cut. And then I'll go in with the big boy, the disc cutter, which is heavier, but that's also why I wanted to make sure this initial cut was the cleanest, the little bit that you're going to see first, and then I'll make my serious cut. After making as deep a cut as I could with my angle grinder, I moved up to my Evolution's disc cutter with dust suppression, which is attached to a hose. And I'm very slowly and carefully cutting through the bricks using the batten still as a guide. Now this one cuts bricks that are 10cm thick, and it's not my favourite tool because it's dangerous, but it's needed for the pristine finish. But the more I use it on each job, the heavier it seems to feel. So I'm not embarrassed to admit that I did a lot of stopping and starting for breaks in between to prevent the wrong cuts and causing an injury. And when I went as deep as I could, I removed the batten and cut through the remaining brick towards the back. And I purposely didn't cut all the way down to the bottom edge of my bottom course of bricks, just in case I accidentally cut through a brick that was staying. So then I'd have to use a bolster and club hammer for the back of that bottom brick. Once I'd made both cuts, I then drilled through the gaps with a long drill bit through to the other side of the internal bricks for reference, but still only where the mortar was to avoid any chipping of my bricks. And although some of my drill holes didn't match up in a plumb line, that's me not drilling straight, I'd then work out an average and draw a plumb line. I'll be making this nice and tidy later by dotting and dabbing plasterboard to match the existing opening. But as it was autumn and it was getting dark, I started working on chipping the plaster and browning off the internal wall for easy removal the next day when we were ready with lots more daylight. In an ideal world, I would have done this job in the summer, but we prioritised installing a log burner instead. I had to start early the next day as we needed as much daylight as possible, but I'm now working on scoring and removing the old silicone where the beading had been. Also, some of you moaned in my last video that I should be using a proper deglazing tool. So I'm trying this quarter moon one, and wow, this was sharp as hell, and it took a lot of getting used to, particularly on really old UPVC windows. In fact, removing them took a lot longer than I expected, especially because the glass panels were stuck to the seals inside and needed a lot of encouragement with WD-40, a palette knife, and 2 pairs of hands to tease them out safely. Yeah, come round, quickly. Finally, I could work on unscrewing the frame. Well, that came out easier than my dad thought it would. My dad suggested getting a metal blade for my reciprocating saw for this, but luckily everyone came out easy. However, I did find the protruding raw plugs stopped me from getting it out, so I needed it after all. Can you support it somehow there? Now I could work on removing the sills, which I would have loved to keep the wooden internal one intact, but as the brickwork had been plastered around it and nailed and wedged in, I thought the quickest way to deal with it was saw it in half and lift it out. I couldn't afford to lose any time. Then I could crack on removing the external bricks with my hammer drill And on the very rare occasion, I'd use a club hammer to smash one so I could loosen up the bond and start piling them up at the side for Mr. TCD so he could store them away for future use. And I kept going but stopped at the bottom last 3 courses of bricks. Now I've got 2 courses of bricks left to remove, but I've stopped using my chisel attachment on my SDS hammer drill because sometimes it's disturbed bricks below, and so I don't want to take any chances. And what I'm going to do now is just stitch drill the bottom underneath the 2 courses of bricks, do a few of those, and then I can start removing the stuff at the top. I don't want to create more work for myself. After cutting the damp-proof course away, I continued to drill more holes to the internal bricks in line with the external ones for removal. Then I used a sledgehammer to quickly remove the breeze blocks. The next thing I had to do was cut some cavity closers down to size to prevent heat loss and damp between my external and internal bricks. It's a rigid plastic with polystyrene on the back, and depending on the size you buy to match your cavity, it's got some grooves in it where you can score along it to match the size of your cavity. So you just measure the width of your cavity and score along one of the grooves to remove the excess so it becomes a snug fit. To attach, I ran silicone along both lips, then slotted it in and fixed with additional clout nails into the mortar joins. Although later I think I'll be adding more silicone, as I wasn't that impressed with how this stuck on. I probably would have been better using SBR. So you've seen me put the cavity closers on. Now it's time to cut the sill. I've already made my mark. Hopefully that fits. Oh, nice. Do you get that? Now we've temporarily placed that on and it fits, I want us to do a dry fit to see if the actual frame does fit. We've got to do that really quickly. I think we've got 2 hours of daylight left. Oh, having a microphone here is so awkward. Oh, it looks like it's going to fit. Oh, I'm so relieved. I'm so relieved. Oh, right. And actually, the way it's set back even like 20 mil, you can barely see that. Yeah, what space have we got there? And now check the sill for level. Right, it's not bang on, which is important to make sure the doors open and close properly. Thankfully, the clearance reduced by the double glazing company allowed me room here to tweak it. So I've noticed that the bricks aren't perfectly level. So before I put the sill in, I'm just putting a few packers on the side I need it, and then I'm going to put a load of silicone on. I don't want them too far away from each other either, for a weakness in the sill itself. Right, I'm going with that. Also, you might be wondering what's happened to the damp-proof course. Well, we don't need it anymore because the plastic sill is the damp-proof course now. Also, I'm probably going to put some screws at the bottom. Right, the sill's going back on. So we're going to get that roughly where we think it's going to go. Anyway, let's check with the spirit level quickly. Now I'm running a couple of beads of silicone along the section where the door frame slots on top. See you, Lenny. Right, another one there. And a squiggle in the middle for good measure. See you, Dad. Now I've got to get it on evenly between the walls. Then I need to screw the frame to the actual sill itself and then start packing it up and screwing it in. I'm putting the glass in. What time have we got? We've got 1 hour and 10 minutes to do that. Hopefully we can do that. We need to be able to make sure this is secure tonight. Right, let's go. It's got heavier. Why is it heavier? Stop. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Right, I'm not quite on the sill. Oh. I'm in it now. The frame is too close to your bricks, so it needs shuffling to me. 5mm each side, roughly. Oh, I know the sill's moved. I've got 4 or 5 either way. Before I mount the frame to the sill, I thought I'd work on getting the frame plumb and mounted to the bricks first. And that's 150mm from the top and bottom, while also ensuring that the frogs in the bricks weren't going to be exposed below. I pre-drilled with an HSS drill bit through the frame first because there's metal in there, although it was a struggle to film all of the screws, but after making sure it was plumb from both sides, I then drilled with a 6mm masonry drill bit, then used my 150mm concrete screws that don't require raw plugs, but also being careful not to warp the frame. I didn't always have time to use packers either, so I stopped screwing when they just nipped. But in total, I added 4 screws on each side and 4 along the bottom, straight through to the bricks. No, you're going to be staring at this all day, aren't you? Asking us to let you out. So the frame is in, it's all plumb and level, but later we'll put expanding foam all around, especially the top, because we can't really get a screw up there because it's thick steel. I've not tried and don't really want to, but obviously we've done it in the nick of time and now we need to get the glass panels in. So a little trick that I learned online is when you take the beading out and then you want to put it back in, you need to put it in the right order, ideally. So I'm going to put some pencil lines to mark so I know exactly which ones go where. And we'll do our best to put them tidily at the side as well so we still don't get confused. It'll start this one anyway. I'm going to put that there. Oh, that came out easy. Bottom. Now I'm adding packers either side for the outer glass panels to make them even. There's already a built-in packer along the bottom, so I didn't add anything there. Right, trim on. Oh, it's quicker, but I'll try not to strangle the hammer again. I add the shorter beads first as they're less flexible, then work on the longest beads, which are starting from the bottom, then the top, and work my way in the middle. I find it easier that way. I'm going to have a go at heel and toe. I'm not perfect. I've not bothered putting a packer down here because it's already got these like packers built in. So I've got one at the bottom hinge side, and now I need to put 2 in the corner there. And this is meant to angle the door. I'm using a glazing paddle to shuffle the glass over, which should prevent the glass from shattering. So that is opening and closing in fine, although the other one I'm having problems with, so I'm going to leave it for now. It's dark and I'm hungry. Before I finish getting the other door to open properly, I'll show you a trick later, I worked on cutting a brick down to size, this time with my angle grinder, to replace the missing ones where the sill used to be. So since I last filmed, it's actually warmer, but a lot windier. Anyway, what I've done is cut out the rest of the brick here because we realised we could get a full brick in there. And I've cleared the mortar away from here and cut a small brick. So I've got a nice end there, so I can try and get that tidy in there up to the rest of the bricks. But now I need to mix some mortar before it gets dark and do my best at getting these in and tidy as possible without staining them. So I'm going for a 4:1 sand and cement mix. I've got cement in here that's going in, and that's by volume. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I don't want it really wet because I don't want it to stain the bricks. So for my water, I'm going to go for half of this for now. That'll do. Right, it's going in, we're having a go. Oh. It's definitely not wet enough. No, there's a hole in this bucket. Annoyingly, I couldn't find my smaller trowel. I'm using my hands. I need to pack it up now. It's tilting. I'm not liking this job. No, it's coming out. In the end, I went frog up, so I had a flat bottom to easily rest on packers. Now, I'm purposely not using a really wet mix because I don't want staining, so I'm going to pack this in as much as I can. I've also struggled to get it completely level, so I've put some plastic packers in here as well. For the top frame, I wasn't happy with how it wobbled, and I didn't want to solely rely on expanding foam. And I did a successful drill test in the old steel lintel from the fireplace. So once I drilled through the frame, I persevered and went through the steel, moved up to the masonry bit, and put a concrete screw in. I actually put 4 in total. So how did I stop my left door catching on the bottom of the frame? Well, I took my dad's advice to take the glass out and wedged up the door as high as I could by trapping the thickest packer I could here, then just continued heeling and towing the glass as normal and replaced the bead. This time I used Windoline, and you're right, it's so much easier. But I don't know how this wedging method worked. It just worked. Right, so I'm ready to seal around the doors, and I've taken your advice this time and got myself an expanding foam gun, which goes that way, and special foam for windows. So I'm going to start with a gap along the top where the frame and the steel lintel is, and then I'm going to work along the sides. And notice this time I've left the protective film on. Because the eaves are in my way, I keep having to put it on the side, so I'm putting this long piece that comes with the gun on it to try and get it in. That's better. For the sides, I've put on this nozzle here for precision. I don't want it going everywhere. So the foam hardened overnight, and I was able to remove the excess with a little Stanley knife. But because I've got that gap at the top, I want to cover it with some trim. So I've been to Eurocell and got a couple of different types. I'm going to have a bigger one up there and 30mm for the sides to match the rest of the house. So I've got my length measured out. I'm now going to hand saw it down to size. This is a fine cut hand saw as well. So I'm just doing a test fit first. Does yours go right to the end? So now I know it's the right size, I'm going to run a couple of beads of Soudall's Fix-All High Tack. So hopefully I can push it on and it stays in place. It doesn't come out that easy. Ow, it hurts. I bet you should really put this in a tub of warm water because it's painful. I was liberal with it for the top bead as I had a mix of plastic foam and mortar to adhere to. Then offered it up and pressed it on while getting it level at the same time. For the sides, I ran over the foam first to seal it before adding more on the back of the trim, then pressed it in place and wiped off any excess. And repeated for the other side. So we're getting closer to finishing, and now I've got to put a couple of rain drip strips on because it opens inwards. So I've already glued the end caps on. We'll do that for the sill later. I'm just putting some more of this adhesive on. So I want it even on the door, but I'm just using a couple of packers on either side just for ease. So I don't have to keep checking for level. So it's going to be about there, about there. It's now even to that. Right. Next, for the sill ends, I'd cut down to size and stuck them on with the same adhesive because I didn't have any super glue. So now I just need to do the finishing silicone touches. Look at that. We just need a step now. but I'm so happy I gave it a go. And already we've noticed it brings a lot more light in here, and the room is warmer because these glass panels are argon filled and the toughened safety glass, because I didn't tell you that earlier, and exactly the same with the bigger French doors over there. And if you didn't watch the video on the other one being fitted, you might not know that we got quoted quite a lot of money. We actually got quoted £2,500 for this one to be fitted, but I went to Round Brand, a local company to where I live, and it cost me £1,200 delivered on the basis I fit it myself. So I've actually saved almost 50% by doing this. But there are a couple of things that I'm not happy with how it turned out. One of them is this obvious thing. I'm not a brickie, but you can tell where the mortar is. Now, I know it was going to be obvious for a brickie anyway, just to try and match it. And again, this one, but it's a small price to pay, I think, for the finished job, and hopefully it will blend in over time. And the other thing is, do you remember in my last French doors video, some of you said, be careful, the trim is fragile? Well, I had that fate on this one. And if you look closely, I don't know whether it was because the weather was cold, but I cracked it there and a tiny bit there. So now it looks a little bit second-hand, but I'm not too concerned because I'm just going to get them replaced. The other thing I've got to now think about is this. We've got a threshold to think about. And if you notice, I've put a cavity closer on there as well because it doesn't go quite down to the ground, because these bricks are full bricks, and I thought just taking those out would be just too much effort. In fact, let me know, would you remove them so the flooring would go all the way to the end, but then I've got to think about how to suspend it and maybe mount something on the inside? I just think the easiest thing to do is have a piece of wood there. And then I've got to think about dotting and dabbing the sides. Anyway, let me know if this is a job you'd tackle, and if you'd do anything differently, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Bye. Good boy.